Breaking developments out of London, and this time, it's not just about Prince Andrew's fall from grace. The headlines may scream about a royal stripped of his titles, but behind the noise, a far more intriguing name has resurfaced: Meghan Markle. Yes, her, the Duchess, who left the palace, crossed the Atlantic, and rebuilt her image in California sunshine. But as Andrew's scandals are reopened, investigators and insiders alike are drawing lines that seem to trace back to her early, glittering, and some say strategically silent years. Over the past 48 hours, a flood of old documents, archived guest lists, and leaked correspondence has reignited a question royal watchers thought was buried. How deep did Meghan's ties to Andrew's social world run before she ever met Prince Harry? Social media exploded when the initials MM appeared in a batch of newly disclosed palace communications connected to Andrew's private circle. Within minutes, hashtags like #MeghanLink and #Sussex Files began trending across X and TikTok. Users started posting side-by-side images Meghan at Soho house parties, Andrew at the same events, sometimes years apart, sometimes in the same city, occasionally in overlapping guest lists that now feel impossible to ignore. According to a source familiar with the reopened Andrew archives, these weren't random coincidences. Those initials showed up more than once, the insider told the Daily Standard. And they weren't about random correspondence. They were attached to event planning, private dinners, and introductions made through mutual contacts, especially around Soho House and certain charity circles. That single detail has sent the royal press into overdrive. Commentators are calling it the connection the palace didn't want to talk about. For years, Meghan's pre-Harry life has been painted as a Hollywood hustle, an actress chasing roles, a humanitarian finding her purpose. But as one former court aide bluntly put it, Meghan wasn't climbing alone. She was already inside circles most actresses never reach, and some of those circles overlapped with Andrew's world. While Andrew's official fall from grace, the removal of his last remaining titles, remains a major headline, it's quickly becoming a subplot in a much bigger story: the resurfacing of every person, every party, and every association linked to his inner network. Among them, Meghan's name appears just enough times to keep the press hooked, but not enough to confirm anything definitive. That gap, of course, is where speculation thrives. Veteran royal correspondent Elaine Grant describes it as the perfect media storm. Andrew's disgrace gives journalists the green light to reopen files that had been gathering dust for years, she explains. And Meghan's name, whether by coincidence or connection, adds a fresh, irresistible angle. The public can't look away. Insiders at Buckingham Palace, meanwhile, are reportedly anxious. One advisor told us that staff are reviewing historical documents to ensure nothing in Andrew's reopened files can be misconstrued. Another admitted, "We're not worried about Andrew anymore. We're worried about who else gets pulled into his gravity." Across the Atlantic, US, commentators are treating the story like a cultural soap opera. The Duchess versus the damaged Duke, two very different royal exiles bound by the same question. How much did they know about each other before the world was watching? For Meghan's team, the timing couldn't be worse. She's been preparing a new public project centered on truth and legacy. But the internet has already chosen a different kind of legacy to talk about. Clips of her early interviews, past party photos, and even her old blog entries are being re-examined frame by frame. As one insider from the royal press room summed it up, "This isn't about Andrew losing his title, that's just the headline. The real story is what's resurfacing because of it. Every file opened for him risks reopening a dozen others. And Meghan's is right at the top of that list." How? For a palace already struggling to protect what's left of its dignity, this isn't just another scandal. It's the beginning of a chain reaction, one that could reach far beyond the Duke of York's downfall, because when Andrew's world unravels, the echoes don't stop at his door. They travel all the way to Montecito. The deeper journalists dig into the reopened files, the more the timeline blurs, and the more Meghan Markle's past starts to look like a map of coincidences that no longer feel coincidental. What began as a rumor about her initials buried in Andrew's correspondence has now expanded into something resembling a pattern: overlapping trips, shared acquaintances, and unexplained absences that stretch back more than 2 decades. Royal commentators call it the vanishing semester, the period during Meghan's university years that appears to have no solid record. In official Northwestern University archives, she spent her junior year abroad in Argentina, studying international relations. But recently uncovered travel data from early 2001 paints a different picture. Passenger manifests and hotel receipts cross-referenced by investigative reporters place her not only in Buenos Aires, but also in Spain, Monaco, and even Phuket, Thailand. Each of those locations aligns curiously with private visits made by Prince Andrew and his business associates during that same period. The coincidences pile up quickly. In late spring 2001, Andrew was photographed on a yacht trip off the coast of Thailand with businessman Joan Elias, a financier known for hosting elite gatherings. Weeks later, a young Meghan was spotted by college friends on what they described as a European summer she could never afford. One former sorority sister, now a corporate attorney in Chicago, told the Daily Standard. "We all wondered how she managed it. Meghan was always ambitious, but those trips, the yachts, the private events, they were far beyond what any of us could do on a student budget." Elias himself was later linked to several of Andrew's private ventures and appeared in multiple photographs with him through the early 2000s. When reporters attempted to contact him last month, his representatives declined to comment, stating only that he has no recollection of meeting Miss Markle. Yet, insiders suggest the connection ran deeper. A former PR assistant who worked briefly for one of Elias's companies recalled Meghan's name appearing in email exchanges regarding guest coordination for a Mediterranean event in mid-2001. British tabloids have seized on the story, labeling it the missing chapter in Meghan's transformation from aspiring actress to global figure. They question whether her early exposure to these elite circles was merely chance or an early, deliberate attempt to navigate her way toward influence. As one palace insider phrased it, Meghan knew how to be seen by the right people without ever seeming out of place. That takes practice, and someone had to open those doors for her. On television, royal analysts are dissecting every clue. A GB Insider segment broadcast this morning described her as a quick study in social maneuvering, noting how her background in diplomacy and her effortless charm allowed her to blend into powerful environments. She was never the wide-eyed newcomer, one former diplomat remarked. She had the confidence of someone who'd been coached on how the upper world operates. Meanwhile, in London, the reopening of Andrew's case files has set off panic behind palace walls. Confidential memoranda, once thought destroyed, have been quietly retrieved from storage. Lawyers are vetting each page, worried that media misinterpretation could ignite new controversies. Yet, every attempt to contain the narrative seems to make it spread faster. Each night, talk shows loop the same rhetorical question: what really happened during Meghan's missing semester abroad? The tension intensified when an old photograph surfaced on social media, showing a young woman, strikingly similar to Meghan, aboard a yacht dock near Ibiza. Though the image is grainy, it was tagged to an event hosted by a corporate entity associated with Elias. Online sleuths compared it with known photos of Meghan from her university years, and the resemblance is hard to ignore. The palace declined to comment, calling it speculative nonsense, but by then, the damage was done. For royal observers, this isn't about guilt or innocence, it's about optics. The revelation arrives at the worst possible moment: Andrew disgraced, the monarchy desperate for stability, and the Sussexes struggling to relaunch their post-royal brand in America. Every new rumor from the old world feeds into a perception that Meghan's story, no matter how inspiring, has always had a shadow trailing behind it. Yet, even as headlines swirl, not everyone buys the narrative. In California, a source close to Meghan's team insists she's amused but unsurprised by the latest speculation. Every time the monarchy takes a hit, someone tries to drag her back into it, the insider told Variety UK. It's recycled gossip dressed up as revelation. Still, the timing is impossible to ignore. Andrew's downfall has made every forgotten name, every old photo, suddenly relevant again. And in that flurry of rediscovery, Meghan's past is being picked apart like a dossier, each unanswered question becoming a headline. For those watching from the sidelines, it feels less like coincidence and more like choreography, a carefully managed dance between privilege, ambition, and fate. The story that once read like a fairy tale now plays out more like a suspense thriller, full of missing pages and blurred timelines. Because if the vanishing semester really does hold the key to how Meghan's path first crossed into Andrew's orbit, then what else from that chapter is still hidden? What other names, what other events, what other deals were quietly made before the cameras ever turned toward her? And as the palace scrambles to lock down what's left of its secrets, one truth becomes clear. Every mystery revived by Andrew's fall has a ripple effect. Some reputations can survive that tide, others may not. By the time dawn broke over London this morning, reporters were already camped outside media houses, clutching folders marked Yacht Circle. It's the phrase now echoing through every newsroom the label investigators have given to the newly reopened chapter of Meghan Markle's pre-royal life. The files, drawn from fragments of travel records, party guest lists, and resurfaced photographs, are painting a picture of privilege, proximity, and calculated invisibility. The investigation centers on a string of elite yacht gatherings across the Mediterranean in the early 2000s, events tied to a constellation of financiers, royals, and socialites. Among the familiar names, Joan Elias, Karen Shuliak, Deepak Chopra, and, inevitably, Prince Andrew. Each of them now linked, directly or indirectly, to gatherings that once slipped quietly under the media radar. What has reignited interest is the appearance, again and again, of a mysterious American guest, whose descriptions align strikingly with a young Meghan Markle. The earliest clue comes from a social column published in a minor European society magazine in the summer of 2001. It described a charming Californian student with ambitions in media, seen aboard Elias's yacht during a party near Saint-Tropez. At the time, no one paid attention. 2 decades later, with the Andrews scandal freshly reopened, that same paragraph has become a lightning rod. Tabloids have seized upon it as the first documented overlap between Meghan's travels and Andrews' extended circle. According to investigators, several of the yachts mentioned in these old accounts were later linked to what UK tabloids now call the Epstein Corridor, a web of luxury vessels and exclusive venues where money, secrecy, and influence often mix too freely. That connection, whether fair or not, has reanimated long-dormant rumors about who was present at those gatherings and why. A former event coordinator, speaking to the Sunday Review, described the atmosphere of those summers as a blur of wealth and opportunity. You'd see politicians, royals, Hollywood faces, and people you didn't recognize who somehow belonged there, she said. It wasn't about who you were. It was about who invited you. When asked about Meghan, the coordinator hesitated before admitting, "I remember a young woman with that same poise, not loud, not flashy, just aware of every move she made." For Meghan's critics, the story fits too neatly into the theory of ambition. They frame it as proof that she'd been weaving her way into elite circles long before the palace ever called her Duchess. She wasn't just in the right place at the right time, says royal commentator James Keller. She was learning the rules of the room, the rhythm of power. But others argue that this retelling reeks of hindsight bias, a convenient rewriting of youthful wanderlust into something sinister. Meghan's defenders insist that none of the so-called evidence proves she met Andrew or anyone in his inner orbit directly. The logic is simple, says media scholar Fiona Glass. If 2 people attended the same event 20 years ago, it doesn't make them conspirators. It makes them guests. Oh, still, optics matter, and the optics here are combustible. Several of the same figures once tied to Andrew's controversial network are also photographed with Meghan years later at philanthropic events. Chopra, for one, appearing beside her in Los Angeles in 2015, long after his own name appeared in leaked Epstein-adjacent correspondence. The overlap might be coincidental. It might also not be. As the story ripples outward, more fragments keep surfacing. A leaked guest manifest from a Monaco gala in 2002 lists A. M. Markle, U.S., in attendance. Another, from a private charity dinner in Mallorca, includes an American media volunteer with identical initials. Individually, the scraps are meaningless. Together, they build the scaffolding of a narrative that refuses to disappear. Insiders at Buckingham Palace are reportedly alarmed by the persistence of these stories. They know the longer this stays in the headlines, the harder it becomes to protect the Sussex brand, says a source close to the royal press office. The optics of Andrew and Meghan in the same sentence? It's poison for the monarchy's reputation. In Montecito, reaction has been measured but firm. A spokesperson for the Sussex household dismissed the renewed speculation as a grotesque recycling of gossip, adding that Meghan has never met or communicated with the Duke of York outside official public settings. Yet the denial has done little to cool the frenzy. YouTube analysts and social media detectives have turned the story into a full-scale online investigation, stitching together images, timestamps, and alleged travel overlaps with forensic zeal. Perhaps the most haunting element in this chapter is the photograph. The blurry, half-faded image recovered from a defunct travel blog showing a young woman on a yacht, hand-raised mid-laugh. The angle hides her face, but the resemblance is uncanny enough to stir headlines. "It's her," wrote one tabloid. "It's not," countered another. The palace, predictably, remained silent. What's clear is that the narrative has evolved far beyond simple curiosity. It's become a referendum on image, power, and memory, how the stories we tell about royals are reshaped to fit the drama of the moment. In the wake of Andrew's disgrace, every ghost from the past has a microphone, and Meghan's early travels are now a stage for speculation. As one veteran journalist observed last night, the truth doesn't even matter at this point. The perception is already writing its own history. Alme. And that history, however blurred by distance and rumor, raises a question the palace can't easily silence. If Meghan's presence in those elite circles was just a coincidence, why does it appear at every turn of Andrew's timeline? The investigation continues. The files keep widening, and the world watches not for proof, but for pattern. Because in the modern monarchy, patterns are the new proof. The story has now shifted to the place where power meets privacy, Soho House. Once a discreet network of members-only clubs scattered across the world, it has suddenly become the focus of the media's most fevered questions. In these polished rooms of candlelight and soft jazz, where royal cousins brushed shoulders with Hollywood stars, Meghan Markle's name surfaces again, and this time, not just as a guest, but as part of the ecosystem itself. Soho House, as one former insider told the Daily Standard, was the quiet bridge between the British establishment and the global elite. It's where future kings met investors, where actors flirted with aristocrats, and where secrets could exist in the blur between privilege and discretion. Prince Andrew, Fergie, and Princess Eugenie were regular faces long before the headlines turned toxic. But buried deep in newly surfaced membership documents, Meghan's connection looks more than social. It looks deliberate. According to sources close to the club's London management, Meghan first appeared on Soho's internal guest list in 2012, tagged as Guest of J.E., a reference that investigators now link to Joan Elias, the financier previously tied to Andrew's Mediterranean circle. Within a year, she had become what staff referred to as a floating member, a status reserved for high-profile guests who frequently attended events across multiple cities. London, Istanbul, New York, Los Angeles, always in orbit, always visible, yet somehow untouched. At first, the revelation seemed trivial. Celebrities frequented Soho House by the dozens. But in hindsight, the overlap between Meghan's social calendar and Andrew's recurring appearances at the same global branches has drawn attention from royal commentators. The Soho House Istanbul opening in 2015, for instance, a lavish weekend where Oscar winners mingled with diplomats, was reportedly attended by both Andrew and Meghan, though no official photos ever placed them together. A coincidence? Possibly. But in the feverish atmosphere of 2025, nothing connected to Andrew is treated as coincidence anymore. The new leaks have also unearthed internal correspondence between Soho House event planners discussing royal considerations for a private charity dinner in London around the same period. The archive thread lists both AY and MM as expected guest shorthand, according to staff familiar with old protocols, for Andrew, York, and Meghan Markle. There's no confirmation either attended, but the planning notes alone have reignited online speculation. For royal watchers, Soho House represents more than a club. It's a crossroads. This was where the walls between classes thinned out, says historian Claudia Benton. It's the modern royal court, but with better cocktails and worse discretion. Those who've worked within the club's orbit describe a culture of selective visibility. One former London hostess recalls Meghan as impeccably polite, impossible to forget, and always networking without ever looking like she was networking. Another, who handled private bookings for the Istanbul branch, remembers a California actress who knew exactly how to stay just out of the photographs. In the wake of Andrew's disgrace, these recollections have taken on new weight. Each anecdote becomes a breadcrumb, feeding the narrative that Meghan's path to royalty was paved not just by charm and fate, but by access by years spent circulating among the same glittering, shadowy names. Still, there's a divide in how the story plays. British tabloids frame it as a masterclass in social ascent. American outlets, by contrast, see it as a smear campaign, the recycling of misogynistic tropes about ambitious women. In the middle sits the palace, desperately silent, while its former members' reputations are dissected in real time. Insiders whisper that senior courtiers are alarmed by how closely Meghan's early life is now being interlaced with Andrew's scandal. She's no longer inside the institution, one aide lamented to the Mirror, but her name drags the crown back into every conversation we're trying to avoid. At the same time, the palace can't afford to intervene. Any statement, they fear, could validate the story. So instead, silence reigns, a silence that feels increasingly strategic. As one crisis PR consultant put it, the monarchy's playbook hasn't changed in 50 years. Deny nothing, confirm nothing, outlast the storm. Yet the storm keeps intensifying. Internet investigators are now matching timestamps from Andrew's official trips to private flight logs showing overlapping arrivals in Istanbul, New York, and even Toronto, Meghan's base during her suits years. Each overlap adds another layer to the mythos. Two lives running parallel, occasionally intersecting, and always orbiting the same elite constellation. For those who followed Meghan's rise, the Soho House revelations feel both inevitable and unsettling. It reframes her story not as a fairy tale collision of love and destiny, but as part of a grander, older narrative, one about proximity to power, about the invisible rooms where alliances are born. And that's where this chapter leaves us, in a haze of velvet banquets, champagne flutes, and whispered introductions. A world where titles mean less than access, and where being in the right room at the right time can rewrite an entire life story. Because behind the laughter and the dimmed lights of Soho House, something deeper hums a pattern of connection that seems to run straight from the scandal of Andrew to the legend of Meghan. The question isn't whether they met. It's whether those rooms, those nights, those invisible networks were the true beginning of the royal revolution that came after. The story takes another sharp turn, with the discovery of what reporters are calling the erased footage. It began as a rumor on a late-night talk show, a claim that an old interview of Meghan Markle, filmed during a press junket in Hong Kong in 2012, had mysteriously vanished from every digital archive. Within hours, online detectives found traces of it in a defunct BBC affiliate listing. The entry was brief. American actress Meghan Markle interviewed at the British Chamber Gala. But the video link? Gone. By dawn, the speculation had already caught fire. Some claimed the footage showed Meghan mentioning royals in the room during the event, a casual remark that, in hindsight, could suggest Prince Andrew's presence. Others dismissed it as tabloid fantasy. Still, the intrigue was enough for journalists to start digging. A BBC technician, now retired, told the London Ledger the clip existed. It wasn't pulled for technical reasons, it was pulled after a request from inside the palace. The revelation landed like a thunderclap. Who made that call? And why, 6 years before Meghan's marriage to Prince Harry, would anyone in Buckingham Palace care about an actress's soundbite from an overseas gala? According to a former Kensington aide, the answer may lie in the optics. By the time she was engaged to Harry, the palace was sanitizing anything that didn't fit the narrative of the outsider, the woman who knew nothing of royal life, the source said. An old clip of her comfortably joking about royals at an elite event didn't support that image. The timing makes sense. In 2018, when Meghan officially entered the royal family, the institution was hyper-vigilant. Andrew's scandals were already simmering, whispers about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein quietly building momentum. They were cleaning up everyone's digital trail, recalls a PR insider who worked with palace contractors at the time. No one wanted overlapping storylines. But as Andrew's disgrace explodes in 2025, those buried stories resurface, and the deleted video has become the new obsession. Every attempt to find it only fuels the sense that something is being hidden. Even Meghan's defenders now admit the optics are strange. If it was harmless, one former Suits colleague asked on air, why erase it? British tabloids have rebranded the missing clip as the ghost interview. US commentators call it the lost confession. For the palace, it's a nightmare scenario, a symbol of selective transparency at a time when the monarchy is already accused of secrecy and manipulation. In Montecito, the Sussex camp has issued no official statement. But one Hollywood associate told Page 6, she knows what they're doing. Every old rumor gets revived when another royal falls. She's not playing the game this time. Ho! Yet the game continues, played by journalists, historians, and social media detectives who see patterns where the palace insists there are none. Each rediscovered frame, each vanished file, adds another layer to the narrative. And somewhere in the middle of it all lies that missing interview, the 30 seconds of footage that could change the shape of the story, or prove there was never a story at all. The fall of Prince Andrew has left a vacuum, and into that vacuum, new power narratives are emerging. What began as his disgrace has become Meghan Markle's reckoning, not because she's accused of wrongdoing, but because the royal world refuses to separate one downfall from another. As Andrew's titles are stripped and his past dissected, Meghan's past is being reinterpreted through the same merciless lens: ambition, calculation, proximity to power. Yet this time, she's not hiding. She's rewriting the script. In the months since Andrew's final demotion, Meghan has re-emerged on the global stage with a calm, curated precision. Her new foundation, Legacy Women, is front-page news in Los Angeles, praised as a movement for truth, agency, and second chances. But back in Britain, that same phrase, second chances, has taken on an ironic weight. Commentators can't help but link her timing to the royal scandal, still smoldering across the Atlantic. When one duke falls, another duchess rises, sneered the Mirror's weekend headline. Behind the sarcasm, though, lies something real: Meghan's uncanny instinct for survival. Where Andrew's world has collapsed under scrutiny, hers is thriving on it. Every headline that mentions her name alongside his only feeds her visibility, her narrative of resilience. She's mastered the art of inversion, says cultural critic Ellis Rowan. Take scandal, spin it into purpose. Take suspicion, rebrand it as strength. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, insiders describe an atmosphere of fatigue and unease. It's not Meghan they fear, one aide confessed. It's what her existence represents, that the monarchy's power to control the story is gone. With Andrew's disgrace uncontainable and Harry's independence irreversible, the institution finds itself fighting ghosts of silence, of control, of a past that refuses to stay buried. In London, royal correspondents now frame the question differently. Not whether Meghan was connected to Andrew's circle, but whether that circle ever truly ended. The names that link them, Joan Elias, Karen Shuliak, Deepak Chopra, continue to float through headlines like pieces of a broken constellation. It no longer matters if the connections were real or exaggerated. In the public imagination, they're already fused. Yet, amid the chaos, one detail endures: Meghan's silence. No interviews, no reactive statements, just a steady stream of controlled appearances and well-chosen words. To some, it's elegance. To others, it's strategy. But to everyone watching, it's unmistakably power. As one royal historian put it this week, Andrew's story is about what happens when you lose control. Meghan's is about what happens when you seize it. And that's where this modern saga leaves us, between ruin and reinvention, between scandal and survival. The Duke who fell, the Duchess who rose, and a monarchy forever caught between them. Because if Andrew's downfall marks the end of one royal age, Meghan's reemergence may just mark the beginning of another. And in that uneasy balance between silence and spectacle, the crown itself seems to tremble, waiting to see who will claim the final word.